Hello there, I'm Sarah, your natural endometriosis expert. Welcome to my podcast. This is the place to be for information, advice and tips on managing your endometriosis naturally. I've been managing my own endo now successfully for about 20 years, and I've been running my own therapy business since 2008, helping others to do the same. If you're curious to cut through all the noise and rubbish that's out there and learn the key to managing endometriosis with minimal reliance on drugs and surgery, then this is the only podcast you'll need. Let's get started. Hello there, welcome to this week's podcast. This week's podcast is actually on the back of last week's podcast. Last week's podcast I talked about why we shouldn't be gaslighting ourselves when we're struggling with our emotions at certain times of the month. And on the back of that, I had a few of you contact me and just sort of say, well, that's great, thanks very much, but why is it happening? Why am I feeling extra crappy at certain bits of my cycle? Why is it happening? And I thought, yeah, that's quite remiss of me. I didn't really explain or help you understand why it's happening. So that's what we're all about this week. Why do your hormones impact on your emotional feelings, on your emotions? So the first thing to say is I'm going to give some general information here. But as with everything I do, I will say, please take some time to understand your own cycle in this. So if you track your cycle already, fabulous. Just check to see whether you check in with your emotions when you're tracking your cycle. If you don't track, then start tracking and make sure you're including your emotions in this. So how are you feeling every day? What's your overriding emotion during the day? Are you quite balanced? Are you quite angry? Are you quite sad? Are you quite happy? It doesn't have to be anything major, just like a general note about generally how you are feeling that day emotionally. Because everybody's different. And if you're struggling with a hormonal imbalance, it might well be that you don't have the same level of hormones or the same balance of hormones as everybody else at certain times of the cycle. So it's all well and good to say around this time of your cycle, your estrogen peaks, so you might be feeling A, B, C and D. But actually, if yours isn't peaking, then you might not be feeling that. And that's just going to add to your stress. So don't compare yourself to everyone else. What I'm going to say is generic information, but always link it back to your own cycle. Even if you're not bleeding, you still have hormonal cycles going on. If you're either on the pill or if you've gone through menopause, either naturally or surgically, you will still have cycles. So that's something to bear in mind as well. You don't just stop having hormonal fluctuations just because you've had a menopause or surgery. Although they may not be as impactful, as severe, shall we say, they will still be there. So yes, excuse me, definitely track this back to yourself, understand what it means to you, and then you'll start to get a better understanding of the impact that your hormones are having. Now, which hormones are impacting? So here we get into the scientific stuff, and not particularly sciencey, as I'm sure you already know. So it's going to be quite lowbrow. It's not going to go into massive amounts of detail, but essentially now people are always quite shocked when I say this, but we have quite a few hormones as women coursing through our bodies at any one time. We have over 50 hormones in our bodies, and they all play their own role. Some are more prominent than others, but they all have a role to play. So if we're experiencing hormonal imbalance, there's quite a few things that can be going on with our bodies. Predominantly, the emotional balance, the emotional links come from our main hormones. So estrogen is the one that we all know and love. Estrogen actually plays quite a massive role when it comes to our emotional well-being. So estrogen has a direct link to dopamine and to serotonin, which, as I'm sure many of you, if not most of you, will know that are essentially our feel-good hormones. So estrogen and our estrogen levels massively impact on how happy we feel, how content we feel with life, and also in terms of our energy to do stuff. So a lot of women I talk to talk about this fatigue, this general lack of motivation, and lack of energy. That can be directly linked to estrogen, which is hugely important and hugely influential in our cycles, obviously. Then we come to progesterone, another biggie. That again is linked directly to our feelings of happiness, to our feelings of calm and serenity. Also, happiness generally as well, linked to the estrogen. It can also control how happy and content we feel with our with our life, with our situation, and mental alertness as well. So the big thing about progesterone is around brain fog. So when we talk about brain fog in terms of menopause or in terms of certain parts of our cycle, even if we don't have endometriosis, or even if our endo isn't hormonally balanced, our endo isn't hormonally linked, then we can still experience brain fog and moments of, or days of, lack of clarity. And that's directly linked to progesterone. There is a caveat to all of this in a second. Testosterone as well. Many women are surprised to know that they have testosterone in their bodies, but we do. We have testosterone flowing through our bodies as well. And again, that is linked to our happiness levels and our energy as well. We get a lot of our energy from testosterone as well. So they're kind of the three of the bigger hormones, or the most influential hormones in terms of our emotional well-being. So you can see if you have an estrogen imbalance, if you have estrogen loss, progesterone loss, or not just an imbalance, but an imbalance, how that's going to massively impact on our feelings of well-being. And we talk a lot about lack of energy, lack of happiness, lack of calmness, but actually the other can be true as well. So people can feel manic. So I don't want you just to feel that it's necessarily a lack of, it can be an abundance of as well. So almost similar sort of thing to bipolar, or kind of that kind of feeling where you can be completely manic, so happy for 1 hour, 1 day, a week, and then all of a sudden feel like you're crashing. That can be totally down to our hormonal imbalance. So if you're struggling with estrogen, progesterone, testosterone spikes, followed by lacks, then that can be massively impactful on our emotions. So that's kind of the sciencey bit behind the links between our main hormones and our emotions. But if you add to that the stress that we're also going under, so the big thing about stress is that A, it impacts on our hormones, but B, it also has similar symptoms as well, or it can do. So it can cause sleeplessness, it can cause lethargy, it can cause feelings of depression, it can cause feelings of unhappiness. So if we're feeling stressed, then we're just in effect exacerbating the symptoms that we're feeling. Now, this goes back to what I was saying last week. This is not about blaming you. This is not about saying that we can take control and it's our fault that we're feeling this way. It absolutely isn't. The hormonal imbalance is causing an emotional imbalance, and that is a chemical imbalance in our systems. There are things we can do to reduce those symptoms, exactly the same way as I talk about managing general endo symptoms naturally, managing menopause transition or surgical transition naturally. There are things that we can do to minimise the impact and minimise the symptoms. But it's really important to know that this isn't your fault. This isn't something that you're choosing to be. You're not just going mad. You're not turning into a cycle, which is what somebody said to me this week. You're absolutely not turning into a cycle. All that's happening is your hormones are all over the place. They're imbalanced, which is causing that chemical imbalance in terms of your emotional resilience as well. So, the same as I talk about in terms of reducing endo symptoms, managing menopause, whatever we want to kind of link back to our hormones, the same is true for our emotional well-being. The least stressed you can feel, the more calm you can feel, the more movement you can get, then the less impactful the stress and anxiety will be, the more your hormones will balance, and the less of an imbalance you'll feel in your emotional well-being. That's an oversimplified version, but sometimes it's good to know just that you can take some semblance of control back. There are medicines out there that can help as well. If your hormonal imbalance is such that it needs a bit of a chemical support, then that's obviously your absolute right. And I'm not in any way dissing medication that's out there. But there are plenty of things that you can do in terms of natural resolutions as well. The first thing to do is to remind yourself that this isn't your fault. So journaling every day and tracking where you are in your cycle so that you recognise when your emotions are fluctuating because of your hormones. Reframing things doesn't mean that you're wrong just because you're having, like I said last week, doesn't mean because you're having that reaction that your reaction is wrong. It might just be a bit exaggerated. So reframe it, bring it down a bit, calm down, learn some techniques to calm things down. Again, don't blame yourself. This is natural. What's happening to you is natural. Time to reevaluate your life as well. Now, this happens, I'd say, to most women at certain points of their life, maybe 2 or 3 times. I know I've kind of reevaluated my life probably about 5 times as an adult. And this happens to all of us, and this can cause stress as well. So again, be gentle on yourself. If you're feeling general feelings of emotional unhappiness, emotional frustration and fatigue, it could just be but it could be your circumstances as well. So it's really important just to be really honest with what you've got going on. And if you need to take time out, if you need space, if you need to just take some relaxation, then that's absolutely fine. We all need time for ourselves. And that can massively help us when it comes to our emotional resilience and our hormonal balance as well. But the key thing to remember from this podcast today is that estrogen impacts our happiness. Estrogen impacts how happy we are. It impacts how calm we are, and it impacts our energy levels, our motivation levels as well. Plan your work around your cycle. So once you understand how your cycle manifests for you emotionally, it's quite beneficial to manage your life around those trends. So if you see that your energy levels are massively impacted when your estrogen level drops in your cycle, then don't plan to go out. Plan to go out when you see your estrogen spiking, when you see your estrogen at its fullest in your menstrual cycle. And the same with progesterone. If you see your progesterone dropping and you see your calmness or your motivation dropping in those times, then build in things to your calendar to improve your calmness, to improve that serenity in your life. Or equally, motivation. Make sure that you are surrounded by motivational people or doing motivational things, whatever they may be, at that time of your cycle, if that is something that impacts you. Not everybody is impacted the same as well. So just remember that as well. Just because somebody is impacted one way by the drop in estrogen doesn't mean that you will be as well. It could be that it has different impacts. Whatever you're feeling is justified. Whatever you're feeling is normal for you. I don't talk about normal, but I do talk about normal for you. Yes, I hope this helps. If you do have any more questions, then please do drop me an email or find me on, I'm not really on social media, so an email's probably better. If you can find my email, then that's fine. Drop me an email, and I'm happy to do more podcasts around this if you want to. I'm also going to be doing some more free resources as well, re-recording some of my free resources as well. So if there's anything around this that you'd like to see expanded upon, then please do let me know. Thank you for listening, as always, and I wish you well on your endo journey. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I really hope that you found this podcast helpful. If you did, please hit follow so you can listen to more, and please also share it with anyone else who you think will benefit. And don't forget, if you're looking for women's health treatments, workshops, or support within your workplace, you can find all of my services, including our monthly virtual clinic, over at www.healthyandwomenshealth.com. I'll see you next time.